everybody. Welcome to this episode today. Hello, friends, new and old. Glad you joined us. So, I was thinking about talking about other ways that we can also navigate the unseen realms. Of course, this channel, this show, we talk a lot about the talking board, aka Ouija Board. But there are many other ways to do the same thing that I do with a board. And one of the ways to do it is through scrying. Now, many of you know about scrying as like a crystal ball, but today we're going to get into black mirror scrying. It looks like this, which I have right here. And the person we're going to have on today is very knowledgeable in research and in practice of using a black mirror to scry. Welcome to Creative Vision TV. I'm your host, Karen Dahlman, and I'm happy that you joined us today. Black mirror scrying is our topic, and the person we're having today is a leading expert and best-selling author in the fields of metaphysics, paranormal, supernatural, and many other things that are anomalous. She's been researching and exploring these areas for almost 35 years. Full-time, you guys. This is a serious researcher. She's written well up to 66 books and has many more planned to come out. Her books are also translated into 15 languages around the world. She's written not just regular books, she's written reference and encyclopedias as well. Now, this person is hard to get a hold of. I know that because we're also personal friends. She travels the world all the time. She's gone. She's at lectures, workshops, programs, teaching, talking. She's everywhere. You might have heard her on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. Or maybe the Canada's popular show, The Conspiracy Show by Richard Serrett. Now, she's a regular guest there and a regular guest on many international, national television and radio shows. You'll find her all over the internet. She and her husband, Joe Red Miles, run and own Visionary Living, which is their publishing house. And by the way, you guys, she's got a fantastic website chock full of information. And of course, her plethora of books are there. Be sure to join her newsletter. I'm a member of her newsletter, and I enjoy getting that every single month. Great stuff. You get to hear about all the wonderful journeys she's on and the different people she's talking to and the places she's exploring. Now, this person not only gets into paranormal in terms of researching, she also has her experiences. She does work with the angels, with dream work, as I said, with scrying. She works with the jinn, werewolves, vampires. She does the Ouija board. You guys, she does so many things, regression work. She's well practiced in these areas. So, you can understand why I'm having her on the show with us today. So, I'd like to welcome Rosemary Ellen Guiley to the show. Welcome, Rosemary. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Karen. It's such a pleasure to be on your show today. I'm so glad we connected.
Oh, me too. It's a thrill to have you on here. You guys, I've got to tell the audience, Rosemary. I got to tell them how we met. So I was writing my second book, The Spirits of Ouija, 4 Decades of Communication. I was talking to Dave Schrader. I was on his show, Darkness Radio, and he said, "You've got to meet Rosemary." And I was like, I was familiar with Rosemary. I've heard her many times on the radio show. I've seen her books. I knew about her Ouija board book she had out. So she was so gracious. I reached out to her, and we immediately had a Skype conversation. And that started a friendship that's been going on to this day for quite some years. And Rosemary, we also got a chance to sit on a panel together at WouijaCon.
That was a great event, and I really wish that we'd have another one. It was so much fun, so well attended. But, we've had a lot of Ouija adventures over the years, and I always look forward to seeing you, whether it's out in California or somewhere else on the road, because we always have a good time. And we always get some amazing communications.
I was just going to say, Rosemary likes to use the board too, so does her husband. We get together, usually have dinner, and then Ouija board is a part of that. Or I should say dinner is a part of the Ouija board experience. But yeah, we've had some great experiences with it, and I'm thankful for that. And so maybe you can just tell the audience, because the audience here is into the board or into different tools to use to navigate the unseen realms, your thoughts about the Ouija board.
I've always considered it to be a neutral device. We had one when I was growing up. My sister got one. She was older than me. She and I played with it, and nothing bad ever happened. I never thought that it was a demonic device or that just using one was going to be problematic. And it's actually distressed me over the years to see Hollywood and misinformed paranormal investigators demonize this board. There's nothing wrong with it. You can have a bad experience opening the door to spirit with any kind of tool.
Mm-hmm.
And so sadly, the board has been misused, especially by kids, thrill seekers. It's got such a reputation for calling up the dark side that kids, naturally want to have that kind of thrill. And so they get it out at a party. That's not the place for it. I'm not sure we're ever going to be able to rehabilitate the Ouija board, unfortunately.
I concur, and and that's okay, because it's not for everybody, and so that's fine. But the ones who are interested in using it, they can come to this channel and learn how to use it in a practical, good way, right?
Right.
So anyway, you're here to not talk about the Ouija board. We're here to talk about another tool of divination, and that tool is the black mirror scrying. Would you like to start with just a little bit of history, the fascinating part about scrying and where it started and who did it?
Well, scrying it's actually a Middle English term from about the 1500s, and it means to discern dimly. But the act of scrying goes back to earliest recorded history. In ancient times, human beings figured out that they could get messages from spirit by putting themselves in an altered state by gazing onto a shiny surface. And people used all kinds of shiny surfaces: lakes, ponds, bowls of water, metal, shiny stones. And there's something about staring at a shiny surface that eventually quells the physical eyes, makes them fatigued, and the psychic eye starts to take over. Well, the black mirror dates back to ancient times too. It has earlier roots, because right alongside things like clear bowls of water and shiny silvery metal, people were using black stones and putting oil on them, or they were getting dark bowls and filling them with water, or bowls filled with ink, for example. There's something about the black shiny surface that beats the crystal or clear or silvery shiny surface hands down as a door opener. And so throughout time, these black shiny surfaces have been used. They were very popular in occultism. When mirrors became silvered, occultists still used black mirrors. And many of them preferred them to crystal balls. So it really is a tool of personal preference. I like the black mirror because the black mirror is like a bottomless blank slate. You look at it so you don't see anything on it, not even yourself. And that is a way for visions from the spirit world to start to manifest.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. Now, do you use a crystal ball too, or you stick mostly with this black mirror?
I stick mostly with the black mirror. As a researcher, I've experimented with just about everything out there.
Yeah.
And anyone who does quickly realizes that some tools are going to work well for you and some not. And it really has nothing to do with the tool. It's kind of the way you relate to the tool. And I discovered, years ago that I loved the black mirror, and I got far better results with it than using something like a crystal ball. Silvered mirrors really don't work very well for this kind of work. You can use them for things like past life exploration, where you really do want to see your face. But by and large, you want something that's going to penetrate the mysteries, and that's what the black does.
Now, didn't Nostradamus do a form of scrying, but did he use water? What did he use? I was thinking it was water for some reason.
There are different stories about what he used. And yes, he gazed into a dark, shiny surface to get his quatrains, his famous quatrains, his prophecies. And by some accounts, this was a bowl set on a tripod filled with black ink. And in other accounts, it's a dark bowl filled with water. So the effect winds up being the same. You've got a shiny black surface, and still, it should be still.
Now, what I understand about scrying is that Raymond Moody brought it back into the limelight of what was in the 80s or somewhere in that time frame. You can tell us about that. But he started with the Psychomanteum, which is truly an old tradition as well.
Well, yes, he did. And it was largely through Raymond Moody that I started integrating the black mirror more and more into my work. Now, I'd had a black mirror before that because they are popular in occultism.
Yeah.
And it was in the early 90s that Raymond's book Reunions came out on how he had used black mirrors to help people have closure with their grief with dead loved ones. And he had gone to Greece, he had visited ancient sites where people had an internal black mirror experience. That is, they would literally withdraw into the underground, into the dark, which is what the black mirror represents. And this withdrawal would be a way of contacting the spirits of the dead. It was done very seriously with fasting and purification, and usually at sacred sites, which were held to be near the entrance to the other world. Well, when Raymond's book came out, I was just fascinated. Now, he really coined the term Psychomanteum, which means place of spirit. The Greeks didn't call it that. They called it the necromantion, place of the dead. They had some other terms for these places as well, but Psychomanteum caught on. And he taught other people, especially therapists, how to use black mirrors for grief closure. So I went down to Raymond's house in Alabama in the 90s, in 1994, and I went through his own personal Psychomanteum process.
Wow.
He had a theater set up. He called it the Theater of the Mind, a huge black mirror in a walk-in closet. And this was a process just like the ancient Greeks, where you prepared yourself, you purified yourself. We talked about what are the goals of what you would like to do and accomplish. And then you had your mirror session, and then there was kind of a debriefing afterwards. So I was so taken with how remarkable and powerful this experience was. I just knew that I wanted to start doing it in my work. And it was a while after that I took some training from him as a black mirror facilitator.
Wow, that's incredible.
So I call my event the Necromanteum. It's kind of a mix of Greek and Latin, place of the dead, which is closer to the original ancient intent. And I teach people how to have this journey in the mirror for contacting the dead. And it's an amazingly powerful experience.
You know, I've got to tell you, it was in the late 80s, early 90s, I was a therapist, and I took just a small workshop on the Psychomanteum and using it for therapy. And it's very powerful. It's like, I almost want to say, if you do this at home, you might need somebody around to debrief, because there is a lot of stuff that can come out of it when you start staring into it and you start seeing images and I got to tell you, emotions tend to come up. It did for me. I see it as a very powerful tool. I didn't pursue it, but I've got Rosemary's book on this subject, by the way, The Art of Black Mirror Scrying, and then I got into it, and I've been using it a little bit over the last several years. I'm not excellent at it, but I can definitely get images. So tell us a little bit about your workshops. I know you teach these all over. You talk about them. I've read about it before in some of your programs you're doing in your newsletter. And by the way, you guys, if you want to know where she's doing these, she travels around the country and the world. You just got to get on her newsletter, because you're going to know where she is doing these special programs, including the Black Mirror Scrying. But take us through that a little bit, like what people should expect if they attend one of your programs.
First of all, we provide a mirror for people, so you don't have to buy a mirror, find one on your own. If you just want to experiment, we've got mirrors you can use. We also sell them. Joe makes all the mirrors that we use for class and for sale. Wow. And we started doing that because we couldn't find any commercial source of darkened glass that lived up to our standards that we could put in an interesting frame that was evocative of the whole experience. So what we do is I teach people how to get accustomed to the mirror, and I have them handle it. I tell them how to put their energy into the mirror, because you have an energetic relationship with any spiritual tool you use, whether it's a pendulum, a Ouija board, a ghost box, or a black mirror. The more you have your energy into the mirror, the more it's going to respond to you. So in a class, people have a limited time, to make that bond, but some of them can do it quite spectacularly. And we clear the mirrors after classes too, so that everyone starts with a blank slate.
Interesting. So did you have an opening to ending, like a Ouija board session might have?
Ouija boards?
Yeah, like when you use when we use a Ouija board, we always start with like an opening way to open it to get into the intentions, and then we have a way to close it. It sounds like you might be doing something similar with this tool, Black Mirror
Well,
Scrying.
I do. When I talk a little bit, I have a talk, and it's an orientation talk, and I talk a little bit about protection, and it doesn't hurt to say prayers to whatever spiritual source or presences are important to you. I do a little ritual of setting the sacred space. I don't make it an elaborate production because many people come to these workshops kind of nervous. They don't know what to expect. And so I want to set them at ease. And so we talk about the mirrors and their history. And I emphasize what a user-friendly tool this is. That even though it's black, and for many people black seems scary, this is you have to look at it like black velvet, or something that is soft and inviting, and you can sink into, because that's what you wind up doing. You wind up sinking into the mirror. And so we have some exercises that I take people through that kind of give them a little psychic warm up, get the third eye going. And I explain all this so everybody knows what the roadmap is. There are no surprises.
That's good.
And then I lead people through a very gentle altered state meditation. And I use hypnosis techniques in that. And I take people to the doorway of the mirror. And then they are invited to go through that doorway. And I invite them to have a guide with them. To go through that doorway, to have the experience that they're looking for. They need to set an intention. And sometimes people don't have the experience that they've intended. They have some other kind of experience. You know how it goes with this work. You get what you need, not what you want sometimes. But you have to have a focus. You have to start out with a focal point. So I leave people in this meditation for about 30 minutes. And for many people, it goes by like, what? It's over already?
Right.
And so people have a combination of things. They may have experiences in the mirror where they see things, hear things, have visions and whatnot. All the activity is in the mirror. It literally shows on the surface of the mirror to them. Or there's something about the mirror and they can see like clouds and forms and light start moving around on the surface, and then something pops in the mental screen. So for a lot of people, they're going to get their visions, their voices, the impressions, emotions. A lot of it's going to be internal. And for many people, it's going to move back and forth between the mirror and the internal.
That's fascinating.
So some people can have very profound experiences. And some people, especially if they are not accustomed to meditating, the more you meditate, the easier it is to get into a relaxed, altered state. And if they're nervous, they kind of got their guard up. So they might not have what they feel as much of an experience. But if they're willing to share what they did get, I can help them see how much they really did experience. And then that has a tendency to keep unfolding. They might have dream experiences that continue that process. They might get signs and synchronicities. It doesn't end with just the mirror event.
This is so similar to using a Ouija board. You practice, you have patience, you have perseverance or persistence, and you continue to build a deeper relationship with the tool. No, Rosemary, I understand too, and I know I have this experience myself when using the black mirror. It wasn't necessarily about the deceased for me. It was about spirit guides or angels or other kinds of visitations from other consciousness beings. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, there are many purposes. Now, when I do a workshop, it's usually got the focal point of contacting the dead, because that's what most people want to do the most.
Yes.
They've got something that, they want to reach out, have that closure, messages, reassurance. But the black mirror also excels for contacting angels, spirit guides, unknown beings in higher realms. You can go to the Akashic records with it. You can look at your past lives with it. I have people use them in readings, and I will use black mirrors in readings sometimes. Well, especially if I'm doing them long distance on the phone. because I wouldn't want to freak somebody out sitting in front of me. You just never know how people are going to react to certain things. But I will, before I start a reading, I ask for information for someone, and I will often look into a black mirror to see what additional information I get. And I might glance into it from time to time while I'm doing a reading. Now, Karen, I must share with you something really exciting, which I just learned about today. And I will be putting this in my revised edition of the book. I will be bringing out later this year a revised edition of the Black Mirror book because I've got so much new material. Ooh. But in November, I participated in some table tipping and spirit circles at an event.
I'm so jealous. I'm so jealous.
This was in Pennsylvania. And there was another woman who was quite mediumistic there, and she actually asked me to help run the seance with her, and she was very taken with my black mirrors. I gave a presentation on them. And so what we did was we sat everybody in a circle. There was a primary circle and then other people who just wanted to be on the outside observing. And we put the black mirror in the center. And I asked people to put their energy into the black mirror, just to put their energy into the black mirror as a magnifier. And we had an amazing seance with personalities and drop-ins. We had accurate names. They were meaningful to people who were there, who could identify them and identify the personal details about them. But here's the corker. Now, this was being videotaped by a paranormal investigator who's a friend of mine. And I just got an email from him. And he said that while he was taping us, he thought he saw yellow balls of light coming out of the mirror. Now, I saw kind of, it sort of looked like smoke, but it was really like ectoplasm coming out of the mirror, just kind of swirls that went up to the ceiling. But he saw yellow balls of light coming out of the mirror, and they showed up on the video.
Oh, yippee.
And not only that, a face showed up on the video as well. So he's sending me a copy. I haven't seen it yet, but I am so excited about that. I've never actually videotaped one of my mirror seances.
Oh my. Will we get a chance to see this? Will this be in the public, like in your newsletter or on your website once you get a hold of this video? Or are you saving it?
Well, I should think so. I would like to take some stills from the video to talk about this. Because I think it's important, and it's evidence. Now, the reason why Joe and I do not videotape is for privacy reasons. Most people who come to these events, they don't want to be on camera. They don't want someone doing a digital recording. And so we ask no photos, no videotaping, no digital. But this was a conference event, and so everybody understood that we were going to have a video record of this event.
Boy, that is really cool. I hope if you share that, you let us know on your newsletter. So you guys, again, sign up for her newsletter. That's magnificent. So, all right, so talk to us now a little about if we can make our own black mirrors at home. I know you have some ways to do that. And let's say somebody wanted to get started today. I highly recommend getting this book. This is very intensive book about the history of it, why, how to do it. But this is a good book to start with. However, if they want to make a black mirror at home, how do you recommend that? What would you tell them to do?
It's a very simple process. It's not mystical at all, but it is time consuming. And it takes a number of days for a mirror to come together. By the time we prep, first of all, we prep the glass, we clean it. The mirror has to have, or the glass has to have something that will help the paint. It's black paint. Adhere to the surface. And we have had varying results with different qualities of glass. And, we've had do-overs. We've had a lot of do-overs in our basement laboratory. But the glass has to be prepped. And we prefer rolling the paint on. I've tried spray painting. To me, it's messy. But Joe rolls the paint on. We've experimented with acrylic and oil and marine, and all three of them work. I think marine enamel probably gives the nicest depth and texture. An etching primer, which you can get online. Etching primer in black. It's an artist's, you get in a spray bottle. And if you spray that on the glass, it helps the paint stick to the glass.
Perfect.
Now, this is thing we've just started doing, so it's not in the original book. We just talked about prepping it with cleaner and making sure that the glass didn't have any of that. Some of them have built-in tintings, and you can see if you hold it up, it's got wavy lines in it. It's like a built-in tinting that is supposed to protect photographs and art from sunlight. But you don't want to put these things in sunlight anyway. You want clear glass.
Yeah.
And so an etching primer and rolled paint. And depending upon how well the paint adheres to the glass, minimum 2 coats, ideal 3.
Okay. That makes it really nice, solid and black. Mine is really solid and black. I got mine from Rosemary because I wanted to do it right. I didn't want to go make my own. But this one works fabulously. So however you did that one, that works great. Now, and I remember reading in your book, there's things that ways to enhance our experiences using this tool. And one of the things you talked about was the moon, the relationship to the moon. And then you also talked about having a traveling altar. Now, maybe you could talk to some of these ideas and concepts of when somebody starts using this tool, they can enhance their abilities with it.
There is definitely a spiritual component to this work. And the more we bring that into it, the more we're going to make that connection with spirit with our tools and have more profound results. So one of the things I do want to mention is that if you do make your own mirror, the curing process, as Joe and I call it, we bathe the mirrors in sacred sound. Sometimes we use chant while they're curing, while they've been cleaned and they're drying, or we've got this coat of paint drying. We've experimented with classical music, the Mozart effect. We've used chant. We've used 432 hertz meditation music. And all of those are effective. And I think when you have the environment bathed in this high frequency of sound, it literally goes into the object itself. And then, of course, when Joe makes them, and also when I pick them out even, remember I said about the handling, how important that is?
Yeah. That
when we handle the frames and the glass, we're putting healing energy into it because we want the mirrors to be productive, happy, positive tools for people. We have no control over how people use them on the other end, but when it leaves our hands, we want it to be as charged as possible. Now, psychic work is by its very nature a lunar faculty. And so the moon rules the tides of emotions, the tides of the body, and the psychic faculty. Any paranormal investigator knows that the phase of the moon is going to have an influence on the level of activity that they encounter. So we like to do the making of the mirrors during waxing moon because the moon is on the increase and it's considered to be a time of good fortune, maximizing benefits, and things like that. Sometimes I have no control over the dates for workshops. They're not always during a waxing moon. Yeah. But that's okay because the waning moon has its advantages as well. The waning moon is a time to eliminate obstacles. And so when I am doing preparing the energy of place, if we're having the workshop under a waning moon, I'm asking Spirit to please remove all obstacles people to in order for them to have the experience they're meant to have. And the workshops are just by and large very successful. There are people who, if they have a hard time with it, there are other people who are often running like racehorses the first time out of the gate.
There's always those people that could just get this like that. I know not everybody can, I was kind of like that with the Ouija board, but I wasn't like this with this tool, you guys. And I use other tools too. The pendulum's the same, dowsing rods, and also when I use my tarot cards, I'm pretty good at my oracle cards more than my tarot cards. But yeah, we're not everybody's good at it out the gate. But that's good to know that we can work with the cycles of the moon. You know, Rosemary, I got to tell you, I've had this asked 2 times to the guides when I was doing some sessions. Either on a radio show once, and then also live ones I do on this channel, where people get involved and ask their questions. We were asked the guides were asked if the moon is hollow in a satellite, like created, or is it a real moon? And the answer is the moon is real because it influences us. It influences our faculties. It influences our bodies. It influences the tides, the seasons, just as you just said. So I think that's fascinating that you brought that up, because the guides would say, yes, this is a real thing, that it does have energy and affects us. So I love that you can work with the moon, and I know in this you do talk about that, the different phases of the moon and how to work with it. You said something earlier, and I think this is important to highlight here, as it goes with any type of divination tool or any type of tool just to work with the unseen realms, like you said earlier, Frank's box or an EVP thing. We have to do preparation, but I know, talking to you, that you are, and I'm the same way, we're not just preparing for the session, we're doing spiritual work all the time. So when we come to the session, we have that. Maybe you could speak to how to enhance your abilities even outside of this tool, so you can work with any kind of divination tool.
But the best thing to do, and I've told people this for years, is to have a daily meditation practice. And you know, you don't need to withdraw like a yogi and sit in a lotus position for hours. You know, to have the benefits. A few minutes a day of stilling the mind. Meditation is different from prayer because you are stilling the mind, you are making contact with spirit. But there are forms of active meditation that we can use meditation for, setting affirmations in place and things like that. But what it does is it literally builds up your psychic armor, and that's the aura around you, the envelope of energy that interfaces between your physical body and the astral realms. And it's really your first line of defense against the incursions of disease and illness, negative entities, negative thought forms from other people. If you have a strong aura, you keep all that stuff out, but you let in the beneficial. So that's the first thing to do, is to establish that daily practice. And then when it comes time to do actual spiritual work like this, it's like you've got an engine running in the background, and all you have to do is kind of a little bit to set some things in place for the actual event. I've met paranormal investigators who think that before they walk into a haunted house, they have to go through some sort of massive prayer or ritual or invoking this or that for protection. And frankly, if they haven't done their homework, that's not going to do a whole lot of good, because what's it going to stick through to? You haven't given spirit any reason to penetrate and enhance your energy field. So that really is the most important thing.
Yeah, that's kind of like I think the analogy would be like being a weekend warrior athlete, where you just go, full out on the weekends, and you're dead, recovering for several days after, because you're not constantly building up your abilities through the athletic movements or whatever. So I look at it that way, kind of like a physical thing as well. So yeah, I'm with you, just doing a little bit of meditation every day, having my mindfulness about things in life, finding things and ways to be positive even when things are not so good, and just trying to keep my energy up, and different ways to do that. So I'm glad you brought that up. Do you have any stories you can share with us from your experiences with people, with clients, even with yourself, that have happened? And I know you mentioned some things in the book, but that would help people understand this process, and maybe something how the person has come to, realize something because of using a black mirror, some kind of breakthrough.
Well, for many people, just having some sort of personal evidence of contact with the dead is profound beyond words. And that may come through a fleeting image, or words that fall into the head, or a sense that someone is around them, maybe behind them, at their shoulders. It's different for everyone. So many of those cases of people having those experiences and having some sort of meaningful message that sort of sets everything right with them. We have had phenomena, and I find the phenomena very interesting, even though the real value is what's going on internally with the people who are having the experience. But phenomena break out in mirror workshops quite often, I think, because of the energy and the fact that we've opened the door to other realms. We've had apparitions of goddesses show up.
Oh.
We've had angels show up. We've had sounds. We've heard chanting, whispering and humming. We've had breezes go through the room, people feeling touched on their heads and shoulders. We've had the sounds of drumming in the room, and these are heard by multiple people as well. We've had footsteps. Just last fall in my Salem necromantium, which is done in a carpeted room. And yet all of us heard the distinct sound of footsteps in the back of the room. It's the kind of sound that shoes would make on a hard floor.
Oh, my goodness.
So that was kind of interesting.
Wow, and it's all carpeted. So you're like, where did that come from?
Right. But, I think we invite spirit in, and they come in and they witness and they walk around and they participate.
They do. It's once you set that stage for that and invite them. That's the key thing, is inviting them. And you can have all kinds of interaction. So when you're doing these workshops, you did talk about the seance you did, but these are different. People are sitting there with their own mirrors, right? But yet they still can all have this very global or universal experience while they're working with their mirror, it sounds like.
Yes, because even though they've got their personal action going on in their mental plane and with their own mirror, they're likely to be aware of environmental sounds and impressions as well. And so at the end of the event, I encourage people to talk about what they experienced, without violating anyone's privacy. But I've always pointed out that what you experienced may have been experienced by someone else, and so that's validating for all of us.
Oh, it's very fascinating. So we're at the point of the show where I always ask my guests to give some final words of wisdom, inspiration, guidance, something that you think will be a good takeaway for the show. And since today we're talking about Black Mirror Scrying and divination tool, we'd love to hear something about that somebody could take away right now and begin to navigate the unseen realms in greater ways.
Well, I love the theme of your show, Karen, and
thank you.
It's so appropriate for a lot of my upcoming work this year. I'm going to have more emphasis than ever on afterlife research and studies, and also the importance of establishing an energetic link to the afterlife, to the dead. We neglect the dead.
We do.
Energetically. And maybe we go visit their graves or their crypts and feel sad, but we don't consider them to have an ongoing relationship with us. And this is not about keeping the dead earthbound. This is about having an energetic spiritual link with the afterlife, that our departed loved ones are now in a different place and a different role, but they are still part of our lives. And many ways to keep that energetic link going. And I will have a book out this summer that will talk a lot about those. And some of it, in some of it, I'm going back through time, because some of the old customs throughout history, they're still very valid today.
Yes, I think we go back in history, and I know you and I have talked about this before, is like the supper, when you have the supper for the dead, it's like they really still honored their ancestors. And what the guides always say to me is that if you could just be aware we're this close, or your loved ones are right here, just another dimension, they're right here with us. It doesn't mean we're holding them earthbound, like you said. I think that's really important for people to hear that. It's saying that they're in their other dimension, they're moving forward, but you're still connected in that heart space. So that's well said. Rosemary, where can we find you? Of course, you guys, all the links will be below that she shares with us, but where could people find you? Because pretty much you're everywhere, but go ahead and tell them.
My website is visionaryliving.com, and I do have a calendar there. Right now, I have a Black Mirror event scheduled in March in Seattle.
Wow.
I have one confirmed and one still tentative. And I have two Black Mirror events in Scottsdale in September.
Oh,
And
wonderful.
yes, Black Mirror is also confirmed for the Haunted America Conference in Alton, Illinois in June. And of course, my annual Necromantium in Salem.
Okay, there's quite a few to choose from, you guys. It's been a pleasure having you on the show, Rosemary. Thank you for sharing your expertise and your research you've done and your practice with the Black Mirror. So thank you again for being here with us. Really appreciate your time.
And thank you, Karen. Always a pleasure talking with you.
Likewise, thank you. So there you have it, you guys. Here's a woman who's out there exploring the unseen dimensions in really unique ways. What was old, she brought back to being new again. And now she's using the Black Mirror scrying in many ways to reach into not just the deceased, but for closure and grief, but also angels, guides, guardians, and helping people understand that the other realms are this close to us, like this far away, and we can still be in contact with them. And it's a natural thing to do. So I highly recommend join our newsletter. Check out this Black Mirror scrying book. It's really great, especially if you want to start that type of divination tool. I recommend it. And thank you again for joining us. This was Creative Visions TV. I'm your host, Karen Dahlman. Now get out there and explore the unseen dimensions. And I'll see you again real soon. Bye-bye.